Hi everybody, it's Ben, also known as Brother Eli. Namaste at Church Universal and Triumphant. My name is Benjamin Turner, Ben Turner, but you can call me Eli as well. I was going to look up actually to explain to people who Eli was in the Old Testament, but I probably need some better lighting. Just give me 1 minute because my face is in shadow. I want to correct that. And we're going to talk about elementals today. We're going to talk about the magic cat, okay? What's going on here? I don't want that. There. When I say magic cat, I refer to the magical cat in my neighborhood who's a wizard of some kind. He uses magic. So do we. When I say we use magic at CUT, I don't want to belabor the point um, because we, as a culturally, are opposed to the use and the deployment of witchcraft as emerging from murder and the murderous intent, is how we put it, and the damnations and condemnations of hell and the rhythms of death and hell, the death spirals. So we don't deploy witchcraft. We say we don't, but in a way, some people would consider us to be white witches. I've explained this before. And a lot of people in church, because they're so Christian, don't like to hear it or don't use it. I think it's that they don't use it, but they understand that we're magical. Well, when I say magic, I mean that in the truest sense of the word, and I want my Christian friends at the Baptist church and at the Pentecostal church to understand that additionally, because it's an anthropological term describing certain kinds of prayer. Our kind of prayer at church is anthropologically known. It's the actual term for it in religious philosophy. It's known as ceremonial magic. Although you don't go in, there's not the guy with a wizard hat or Mickey Mouse or the fairy godmother coming down with a wand, or people dancing, uh, walking a circle around a pentagram or anything like that. It's not that kind of magic. It's not conjuration in that sense. But the actual prayer is known as ceremonial magic. You can't say that about um, the Pentecostals even, or the standard Christians. It's a different kind of prayer. Catholics don't deploy magic within their mass. It's not called magic. But at church, what we do um, through the course of decreeing and utilizing mantras, the way that we do that energy and the way those prayers are structured is a form of, technically, it's called magic. Although you wouldn't recognize it as such because people use the term, I think, in a more in a sense where you would be led to believe that something is overtly supernatural. I think some people might consider CT to be supernatural and to appear supernatural. It really depends upon your perspective, but it's technically a form of magic, ceremonial magic. So today I'm going to talk to you about the magical cat, who is, as I stated, is in some sort of. I'll explain him to you. His name is 50. I call him 50 Cent after the rap star. I don't know what he calls himself yet, but I call him Fifth or 50, and I'll tell you about him. But what I want to do first is go into, and I also want to encourage people who might think that they're just not geared up to listen to a story about a cat. This is not a typical story about an everyday cat. It's a story that I think is packed full of very potent meaning, and I think that anybody can benefit from understanding it because what I am discussing is elemental life and how to work with um, the animal kingdom, which is a component of our practice. I think more commonly discussed in religions such as Wicca. Speaking of witchcraft, a lot of Wiccan people refer to themselves as witches, but at Church Universal and Triumphant, the only context in which you hear people refer to themselves, you don't hear people refer to themselves as witches. And as a matter of fact, the calling someone a witch is a form of condemnation within the church. And if something is, and we'll say it, and our messenger says it, Elizabeth Clare Prophet says it, that's witchcraft, which she means it's black sorcery. As a chaplain coming in in the what are we, the second? I guess I'm second generation CUT. I'm trying to think. Well, yeah, because CUT began in what, 75? It was commissioned in 75 by Jesus and Buddha. Another gentleman in the church, and I'd like to credit him because he's a friend of mine online now, but I'm not sure if he wants me to credit him or not, also made a good point, and that is that Johannes was the ascended master who, and he was a pope. That's the name for one of the popes, is the ascended master who who initiated Church Universal and Triumphant through Mother. That's true. And what was it, Pope John I think it's Pope John the 23rd. It's the beloved, one of the beloved popes who was a reformer and was known for being just a good pope. Like people like Pope John the 23rd and Pope John II. Mother adored Pope John II. And actually, Pope John II should be an ascended master within the church now, but Temple of the Presence got to it first. I've explained that in other videos. People say don't listen to Temple of the Presence because it's not Mother. It's rather a spin-off church. And I say, well, you have to listen to Temple of the Presence when they actually have the current information. And I've heard the spiritual director at CUT say that they don't always have the current information. And when I've contributed, and I'm not, part of the problem that we have in church is that I'm not at the ranch and I'm not being paid to be an administrator, which really needs to happen. But I've heard the spiritual director there say that it really is whoever has the best information. And if it's Ben, then Ben has the best, newest leading edge information. I believe that I have most of the leading edge information, the changes in hierarchy and so forth. But again, it's not properly enthroned, and it's not properly acculturated. Oh, I don't say acculturated. It's not properly, it hasn't been properly received by the magisterium yet. It actually is part of the magisterium, my participation in holy orders, but it's not being discussed formally, and it's time that it develop a formal venue. So I encourage people to support that because it's impractical to proceed with our work through Mother and Mark and so forth when not everybody has access to all the information. It becomes impractical after a point. So I encourage people to give it some thought, how to get me up there and working with the magisterium. And again, I'm in holy orders. So 50, we have to talk about 50, and then we have to talk, but first I want to tell you a little bit about Eli. Now, Eli is not absolutely the most revered figure in Bible history, but he is known for being the first high priest who is also a sitting judge in the ancient courts in the Old Testament. The first judge who is also a high priest. So you have him administering to his people as a judge, but he's also a religious priest. So that's what is meant by Eli. But I will tell you a little bit about his story, and he ties to the character Samuel. Let's see if I can get some search engines pulled up here really quickly. Okay, I'm going to have an OK tag. Is that what's going on? Okay, so let's look this up right now. Let's see what's going on with Eli. Hi everybody, how you doing? Doing well, I hope. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, you hear me yelling at my computer all day long because it's basically what I do. And unfortunately, some of you may know I've been involved in litigation, and I share it when I can. I'm actually a lawyer in addition to being a chaplain. I'm really blessed in that respect. I'm not really blessed in terms of what's going on in my solar plexus because that's right aspiration according to Buddhism, right? And it's important when all of your chakras turn in the right direction. I'm examining my shirt because I spilled coffee earlier. I want to make sure I don't have the coffee stains because I don't think that people at the church would like that very much. It's important for all of your chakras to be turning in the right direction. And Nada, Lady Master Nada on the 5th, 6th ray, correct? The solar plexus governs right aspiration. Rather, right occupation, right occupation, which is incredibly important. You don't want to end up having bad work illegal work, faulty work, lack of work in your life, because it'll destroy everything else in your path. And because of my astrology and all sorts of karma that I've had to encounter, yeah, it's been an issue. It's been a serious issue for me. So it's something to overcome, but also collectively to overcome. Let's take a look. So, Eli. And again, his story ties to Samuel. So, who is Eli in the Bible? My birth name is Benjamin, right? And that's one of the houses, one of the tribes of Israel. Benjamin, according to biblical tradition, one of the 12 tribes that constituted the people of Israel, and one of the 2 tribes, along with Judah, that later became the Jewish people. Benjamin and Judah. Benjamin and Judah. The tribe was named after the younger of 2 children born to Jacob, and also called Israel, and his second wife, Rachel. Jacob was called Israel, I believe. Yeah, Jacob was called Israel, and his second wife, Rachel. Younger of 2 children born to Jacob and Rachel. So, that's just a little bit of background. Tribe of Benjamin. We can get into it. By getting into it, I'll skip Got Questions and I will go to... This looks current. You could do study.com. Bible study tools. I'll do study.com, Tribe of Benjamin. I mean, my impulse is to go to Britannica, as always, so I'm just going to go there right now really quickly. Oh, can't get the full information. I can get a couple sentences. I'd have to pay for it to get the full information. So Benjamin, according to biblical tradition, one of the 12 tribes, is stated who he was, the son of Rachel and Jacob. 2 tribes that later became the Jewish people, Judah and Benjamin. After the death of Moses, Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land and, dividing the territory among the 12 tribes, assigned south-central Palestine to the tribe of Benjamin. Members of the tribe were separated when 2 distinct kingdoms were established after the death of King Solomon. Members of the tribe were separated when 2 distinct kingdoms were established after the death of King Solomon. So we have to get into Solomon at this point. That's the next logical step, is to start trying to figure Solomon out. Okay, so I'm going to go back one. I'm going to see if they're going to give me... I won't go to Britannica, but I will go into Eli. I got questions. But what I'd like to do is do Bible.net, or one that specializes in the Bible. How about Good Faith Media? The Book of Eli is the battle for the Bible. Oh, this has to do with the film. Nah, we'll skip that because it's a big budget film. No, Eli and Elijah are not the same person. Don't make that error. Elijah is, some people call him Elias, or it's spelled that way in some versions of the Bible. Hebrew prophet who ranks with Moses in saving the religion of Yahweh from being corrupted by the nature worship of Baal. Right. Pagans, right? Very, very, very bad pagans in the Old Testament. Let's see. Is Eli the devil? There's a good one. This one says it's actually the son of the devil. What are they talking about here? I don't know what that means. It looks like it's from just a horror movie. Okay, I don't know what these mean. Okay, and that's not us, that's the movie. What? Okay, and it's not Elijah. So Elijah went bodily into heaven, like Enoch did, and Jesus did. When they talk about that sort of ascension, Elijah went up, body and soul. So did Enoch. When you read down the lineage, the begats, Lamech, and you know, um, going down through Moses and the really old guy. Um, we'll do the begats really quickly so I can get those to you. This is in Genesis. So you should know who Lamech is, and we should all know who Lamech is, and how, you know, the five guys back from Noah is basically, that's good to know. And you should know Methuselah, who was the oldest guy in the Bible. Methuselah lived for a long time. You know, he's like an Adam. Adam lived for, I think, 193 years, or let's see, 930 years. So back then, people were living forever, pretty much. Okay, so and then so we're gonna know who Noah's dad is in Genesis 5:25. Okay, well we do King James, so I'm gonna click to it. There's an Enos too, and I've talked about this in another video. There's an Enos as well, not the same guy as Enoch. There are two Enochs. It's a little bit confusing. We're Sethites, by the way, right? I thought at first for a while that Seth would be the replacement, and he is. He's the replacement son. Cain killed Abel. Adam and Eve had two kids, and of course, who were those children? And I've told this story. In the Bible, Adam and Eve have children. They have two sons, but how does humanity continue if they only have two sons and Adam and Eve were the first man and woman? How do you explain it? Well, the truth of the matter is that there were people also in the land of Nod, also known as east of Eden. Okay, so when you read about Adam and Eve being the first, God made Adam out of clay, and then Eve from a rib of Adam. You read about that in the Bible, okay, you say Adam's the first man because it says in the Bible that God put his hands in the clay and did that. That's accurate, except at some point the sons had to have wives to reproduce, right? So there were people in the land of Nod, also known as east of Eden, either before or after God made Adam. So what it might be the case that Adam was the very first, but if that's the case, then God immediately went to Nod, east of Eden, to make more people so that they could reproduce. So he had to have made someone else, right? So Adam wasn't the only man that God made from clay. He couldn't have been. It's not possible that Adam was the only one. So God went and made someone else from clay, or the alternative is, and I suspect this is the case, that the Nodites, also known as the Nodians, were already there. And where did they come from? So that's a big question mark as well. But that's a biblical fact. Either the Nodites and the Nodians were already there when God made Adam, or God made Adam and then turned around and went to Nod and made another Adam. So there were either two Adams or a race of people who already existed, if they were from Earth. I don't like too many alien conspiracies because I think it detracts. I do. I think that trying to talk about Nephilim all the time detracts from the core parts of the Bible. But how do you account for a race of people that pre-existed Adam, that came from somewhere? The descendants of Adam. Let's look at this a little bit. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man in the likeness of God, made he him. Male and female created he them. Okay, male and female. They make a point of saying that. And blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. Called their name Adam. And Adam lived They say 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. This is Chronicles, by the way. So this is a little bit, this is not Genesis. Right, Seth, but Seth was the third son. And he's the son that they had to replace Abel, who was murdered by his brother. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And Seth lived 105 years and begat Enos. Enos. And Seth lived after he begat Enos 807 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. And Enos lived 90 years and begat Canaan. And Enos lived after he begat Canaan 815 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enos were 905 years, and he died. And Canaan, Cainan, lived 70 years and begat Mahalaleel, I believe. I believe that's the name. Mahalaleel, I think. And Canaan lived after he begat Mahalaleel 840 years and begat sons and daughters, and all the days of Canaan were 910 years, and he died. And let's see if I can get that right. I'm going to nail that right now. Because talk about annoying. Getting up in front of everybody and not being able to pronounce like what's going on would really perturb me endlessly. Let's see if I can cough it up just by... But who knows, you know, at the end of the day. Let's see. The name is Praising God. I bet it's Mahalaleel. But it might be like Chaim. Mahalaleel. So there you have it. God takes up Enoch. That's the next part of the descendants of Adam. Again, we will get to 50, the cat. We'll get to the magical cat, and we'll get to the origin of the name Eli as well. I want to get into this because we're right here, right now, and I want to talk about Enoch. So it's actually in Chronicles. Okay, this is King James, and then we'll do Methuselah to Noah because it's all in the same section. God takes up Enoch, and Jared lived 162 years, and he begat Enoch. And Jared lived after he begat Enoch 800 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Jared were 962 years, and he died. And Enoch lived 65 years, and begat Methuselah. Okay, so this is like getting closer to Noah at this point. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years, 365 years. So the number of years, the number of days in the current Julian calendar in 1 year. Coincidence? I don't know that it's a coincidence. I doubt nothing's a coincidence. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not. Enoch was not, for God took him. And nowhere else in this lineage does it say that about any of the other people in the Noah lineage. It doesn't say that. It says what you heard earlier, which is the begats, had the son, lived an extra 812 years, had sons and daughters and died. It says that 9 or 10 times. And then, but when you come to Enoch, it's the one name in that lineage that has a little star by it, a little asterisk. And it doesn't just say God took him. It says he was not. So Enoch wasn't... God took him body and soul, and I think that the presumption that one can reasonably make is that they don't really know how to say in the Bible that someone can be taken body and soul into heaven unless you weren't there in the first instance. So really more of an angel when you think about it. You think about the nature of Enoch, really more like when you like this. Yogi Raj Sadhguru Nath Sadhana said, have you heard of Anandamayima, the great Indian saint? Anandamayima was a fabulous Indian saint where She was so religiously inspired all the time that she could really sometimes just not really even function, not typically function. I think she'd I have a hair on my face. She would take something would strike her as funny, and she'd go into like a rapturous 3 hours of laughing and not be able to control her laughter. Or she would just have uh, be in states of samadhi constantly, where she, I think, was basically not conscious a lot of the time. In any event, very holy woman, and very interesting to speak about and to hear from also. And she had a priest, a holy man, who was a friend of hers, who um, was blind, and I'll introduce you to him one day. But Anandamayi Ma, so she's an Indian saint, and Yogi Raj said, among the holy people in India, it's customary to hold the feet of your counterpart or your friend within the coterie of holy people. It's a sign of respect to hold uh, the other person's feet. And Yogi Raj said that when he did that, he put his hands entirely through her feet. They passed clean through her feet, like she was. To me, that means that she was some sort of like projection, not really embodied. He said she's so holy that she's not really. She's so angelic. She doesn't really have flesh. She doesn't really have form. In any event, so interesting. He held her feet because he loved Anandamayi Ma so much. He wanted to show affection and his reverence for her. Hold her feet. His hand went right through her feet, right through them, like she was a TV image. I like that story. So God takes up Enoch. Right, he was not. Enoch was not, for God took him. And I think that some of the scholars would say that in the original, what is this, Aramaic? The original Aramaic Hebrew, that it might mean that he stopped existing, but I don't think that that's really what it means. I don't think that's the technical. I don't think that's why we hear it, and he was not. I don't think that's why we hear that, if you know how that goes. And then from Methuselah to Noah. And Methuselah lived in 180 and 7 years and begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 780 and 2 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 960 and 9 years, and he died. And Lamech lived in 180 and 2 years and begat a son, and he called his name Noah, saying, This name same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. And Lamech lived after he begat Noah 590 and 5 years, and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Lamech were 770 and 7 years, and he died. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So that's how that goes. So I'd say no from Enoch. I'd say no from Methuselah, if you want to know the truth. Well, no from Jared. I think it's easiest to know from Jared. So Jared, Enoch, Methuselah. Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Japheth, Shem, and Ham. Okay, that's how it goes. If you know that, you'll be caught up basically with everybody else in Christianity. Let's put it that way. Because I don't think anybody can recite the full lineage going back to Adam, or knows to care. But if you do Jared to Noah, people will be sufficiently impressed. Trust me. Japheth, Shem, and Ham, I think, is the crowning point. If you know those guys, you'll be fine. So let's see. But I want to know about Eli. Yeah, well, it says descendants of Adam, and it says, I think that I'm not quoting from Chronicles, I'm actually quoting from Genesis, you'll have to forgive me. Chronicles is another reference to the descendants of Adam, and that's at chapter 1, verses 1 to 4, which I'm clicking through right now before going to Eli. Adam's line to Noah. It's really not that far back from Jared. It's Adam, Sheth. I don't know why they're pronouncing it Sheth. What they mean is Seth, because we're all Sethites. I guess they're just doing it. They're saying Seth here. Enos or Enosh, Seth's son. And so we're all descendants from Enos as well. And then it goes Canaan, or I believe it's Canaan. Mahalaleel, Jared, Enoch. They're pronouncing it. They're spelling it Kenoch here. Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But it's not Noah, Shem begat Ham, Ham begat Japheth. It's the three sons of Noah. So Adam, Seth, Enos, Kenan, Mahalaleel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Japheth, Shem, and Ham. Descendants of Japheth. Then it goes on Gomer, and it just goes on and on. But I'm not really interested. And it'll also give you the descendants of Shem and the descendants of Ham as well. I mean, I'm interested, just not right now. What I want to get to is it's good to skip to Abraham, because then you get to talk about Isaac and Ishmael, which are interesting stories. Okay, and then I'll go down to the rulers of Edom. Okay, but we're going to Eli right now to look at that story. And you want Samuel. I'm going to go to the King James again, but I'm tempted to go to like the Living Translation to change it up, but we're instructed to use King James. People think, we're partly Catholic. In a way, we're Catholic, but only partially Catholic. And it's not really fair or useful to try to say that we're Reformed Catholics. I would never say that. It doesn't look like Catholicism internally. It does resemble Catholicism in some respects. And I'll tell you, we have saints in common with Catholics. I think that's where the line really stops, because our soteriology is entirely different. We don't believe in original sin. We're not Lutheran, but Catholics are not Lutheran either. That's kind of where I think we're probably similar to Catholics, in that we reject Luther, but we believe in elementals, and Sanat Kumara plays into our story. Jesus, and as I said, Jesus is beloved, but technically CUT doesn't teach that Jesus' death redeemed all of humanity. We say that it can't be accomplished. That concept does not unfold in the way that it has been so presented. We can talk about that additionally, but you'll find Eli mentioned in 1 Samuel. Okay, I'm there now. I hope I have some coffee left. I do. I should not be drinking coffee, but I'm going to be having a little bit today, because I nailed I clipped a cup from McDonald's. It's good. It's sweet. I like it. Okay. And it came to pass at the time, actually I'll start at the verse 1. And the child Samuel, okay, so Samuel was a boy. The child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days. There was no open vision. There was no open vision. And it came to pass at the time when Eli was laid down in his place, and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see. Eli could not see. And ere the lamp of God went out in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep, that the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, Here am I. And he ran unto Eli, and said, Here am I, for thou calledst me. And he said, I called not, lie down again. And he went and lay down. And the Lord called yet again, Samuel. And Samuel arose and went to Eli, and said, Here am I, for thou didst call me. And he answered, I called not, my son, lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him, And the Lord called Samuel again the third time. And he arose and went to Eli and said, Here am I, for thou didst call me. And Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child. Therefore Eli said unto Samuel, Go, lie down, and it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. God's judgment against Eli. This is where God got mad at Eli, okay? Although, as I stated, first judge was also a priest. And the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel answered, Speak, for thy servant heareth. And the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I will do a thing in Israel at which both the ears of everyone that heareth it shall tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house. When I begin, I will also make an end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever, for the iniquity which he knoweth, because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not. His sons were vile. Eli had bad sons. And therefore I have sworn unto the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice nor offering forever. So, no remedy. There's no sacrifice for Eli's house. No viable offering. Samuel shares his vision. And Samuel lay until the morning and opened the doors of the house of the Lord, and Samuel feared to shew Eli the vision. Then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. And he answered, Here am I. And he said, What is the thing that the Lord hath said unto thee? I pray thee, hide it not from me. God do so to thee, and more also, if thou hide anything from me of all the things that he said unto thee. God do so to thee, and more also, if thou hide anything from me of all the things that he said unto thee. Typical awkward biblical phrasing. And Samuel told him every whit, and hid nothing from him, and he said, It is the Lord, let him do what seemeth him good. Samuel said to Dad, Take it, take the punishment. And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and he did let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of the Lord. So it's Eli's son who's the prophet. And the Lord appeared again in Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord, like the famous Civil War battle, Shiloh, the Battle of Shiloh. And where are we going next? To 4. I mean, with 4 it begins with the Philistines capturing the ark. And, it says the word of Samuel came to all of Israel, but I think that everybody drops out pretty much after that. I don't think, the death of Eli. So, this is the Ark of the Covenant, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? It's true, that's what they're looking for in that film, so there's an excuse to see a blockbuster Hollywood movie for all of us. When we're not allowed to watch films like that, because they're too violent, too commercialized. We can watch Raiders of the Lost Ark to learn about the Ark. So, right. So let me tell you a little bit about it. The Philistines capture the ark, and the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out against the Philistines to battle and pitched beside Ebenezer, and the Philistines pitched in Aphek. And the Philistines put themselves in array against Israel, and when they joined battle, Israel was smitten before the Philistines, and they slew of the army in the field about 4,000 men. When the people were come into the camp, the elders of Israel said, Wherefore hath the Lord smitten us today before the Philistines? Let us fetch the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of Shiloh unto us, that when it cometh among us, it may save us out of the hand of our enemies. So the people sent to Shiloh, that they might bring from thence the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth between the cherubims, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. Verse 5, and when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth rang again. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, what meaneth the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews? And they understood that the ark of the Lord was come into the camp. And the Philistines were afraid, for they said, God is come into the camp. And they said, woe unto us, for there hath not been such a thing heretofore. Woe unto us! Who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that smote the Egyptians with all the plagues in the wilderness. Be strong and quit yourselves like men, O ye Philistines, that ye be not servants unto the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Quit yourselves like men and fight. 10. And the Philistines fought, and Israel was smitten, and they fled every man into his tent. And there was a very great slaughter, for there fell of Israel 30,000 footmen. 30,000 people died. And the ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. The death of Eli. And there ran a man of Benjamin out of the army, and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes rent, and with earth upon his head. And when he came, lo, Eli sat upon a seat by the wayside, watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And when the man came into the city and told it, all the city cried out. And when Eli heard the noise of the crying, he said, what meaneth the noise of this tumult? And the man came in hastily and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were dim, that he could not see. And the man said unto Eli, I am he that came out of the army, and I fled today out of the army. And he said, what is there done, my son? And the messenger answered and said, Israel is fled before the Philistines, and there hath been also a great slaughter among the people, and thy two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God is taken. And it came to pass, when he made mention of the ark of God, that he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died. For he was an old man and heavy, and he had judged Israel 40 years. And his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, near to be delivered. And when she heard the tidings that the ark of God was taken, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and travailed, for her pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the women that stood by her said unto her, fear not, for thou hast borne a son. But she answered not, neither did she regard it. And she named the child Ichabod, saying, the glory is departed from Israel, because the ark of God was taken, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, the glory is departed from Israel, for the ark of God is taken. She repeated it. That was the second time. So that's where the name Ichabod comes from. Additionally, Ichabod Crane, the headless horseman. So lots of horror show references when you watch the Headless Horseman, which is Prince Edward Island, by the way. For those of you who don't know that legend is associated with Prince Edward Island, Canada. It's actually associated with Prince Edward Island. I believe it's a place in upstate New York. There are two Sleepy Hollows, and weirdly, very oddly, both Prince Edward Island. I've been to Sleepy Hollow and Prince Edward Island. I'm trying to think of New York State, possibly, but I've definitely been in Sleepy Hollow in Canada, and both claim the legend. I don't know how they managed to do that at all. Something to look up and not discuss on Halloween, right? So, yeah, the death of Eli. That's what happened. Philistines got the covenant of the ark because Phinehas' wife was overwhelmed with grief during labor because it's her husband-in-law's fault. In part, I think, isn't that was her claim in any event? Um, well, it says the glory is departed from Israel because the ark of God was taken, and because of her father-in-law and her husband, both had been killed. And she said, the glory is departed from Israel, for the ark of God is taken. So that's the death of Eli. And Samuel, I don't know. I'm not sure if this is the book of Samuel, so let's see what goes on in 5. And then you have to deal with the ark among the Philistines. I don't know if you want to hear this or not. I don't need to be challenged with my age just because I like to know how someone else pronounces something. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Is that on your mic? Dagon, right? Fine. Okay, so when the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it from Ebenezer, when the Philistines took the ark of God, they brought it into the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth before the ark of the Lord. And they took Dagon and set him in his place again. And when they arose early on the morrow morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. And the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off upon the threshold. Only the stump of Dagon was left to him. Therefore neither the priests of Dagon nor any that come into Dagon's house tread on the threshold of Dagon and Ashdod unto this day. But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon them of Ashdod, and he destroyed them, and smote them with emerods, even Ashdod and the coasts thereof. And when the men of Ashdod saw that it was so, they said, the ark of the God of Israel shall not abide with us, for his hand is sore upon us. God's angry at this point. And upon Dagon our God. They sent therefore and gathered all the lords of the Philistines unto them, and said, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And they answered, let the ark of the God of Israel be carried about into Gath. And they carried the ark of the God of Israel about thither. And it was so, that after they had carried it about, the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great destruction. And he smote the men of the city, both small and great, and they had emerods in their secret parts. Therefore they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And it came to pass, as the ark of God came to Ekron, that the Ekronites cried out, saying, they have brought about the ark of the God of Israel to us, to slay us and our people. Everyone's scared of the ark at this point, just like in the movie. So they sent and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines, and said, send away the ark of the God of Israel, and let it go again to his own place, that it slay us not and our people. For there was a deadly destruction throughout all the city. The hand of God was very heavy there, and the men that died not were smitten with the emerods, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. King James Bible. It's not a bad story. Then the ark returned to Israel. Emerods and their secret parts. What the heck? And there's a reference to mice. I wonder. Oh no. Okay, move. Okay, okay, to just. Alright, let's leave it. I'm going to skip over the ark return to Israel for a bit. But Samuel subdues the Philistines. And then judges Israel. And then, verse 15, and Samuel, I'm in chapter 7, 15, and Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life, and he went from year to year in circuit to Bethel and Mitzpah and Gilgal, and his return was to Ramah, etc. And then Israel demands a king. Then Samuel issues a warning about kings. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. And he said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots. Not very nice. And he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over 50s. Speaking of 50. And will set them to ear his ground and to reap his harvest and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries and to be cooks and to be bakers, and he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which he shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. So he's issuing a pretty severe warning. Pretty big warning. God grants the request. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. Samuel's warning against despotism. And they said, Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, Go ye every man unto his city. Scroll, tooling right along. 9. Saul chosen as king from the house of from the tribe of Benjamin. I don't mind reading this, but I want to get to 50, so if you can bear with me, let's see if I can get through this, because we're getting somewhere. I did skip a couple parts, but when I read the I skipped part of the chapters, but I was true to the heading. The only part I skipped so far was they declare the king. I didn't read to you the part where they actually look for the king. I read the part where Samuel opposes that they want a king. But now I'm in 9. I'll read you all of chapter 9. We're in book 1 of Samuel. Okay, so now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power, and he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and a goodly. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward, he was higher than any of the people. So this is like your best bet, right? Saul, your best bet, because he's like the nicest guy. From his shoulders and upward, meaning corporeally, all of his aura, the whole manifestation, the whole package with Saul was like the best bet. And the asses of Kish, Saul's father, were lost, and Kish said to Saul, his son, Take now one of the servants with thee, and arise, go seek the asses. And he passed through Mount Ephraim, and passed through the land of Shalisha, but they found them not. Then they passed through the land of Shalom, and there they were not. And he passed through the land of the Benjamites, but they found them not. And when they were come to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servant that was with him, Come, and let us return, lest my father leave caring for the asses, and take thought for us. And he said unto him, Behold, now there is in the city a man of God. He is an honorable man. All that he saith cometh surely to pass. Now let us go thither, peradventure he can shew us our way that we should go. Then said Saul to his servant, But behold, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread is spent in our vessels, and there is not a present to bring the man of God. What have we? And the servant answered Saul again, and said, Behold, I have here at hand the fourth part of a shekel of silver, that will I give to the man of God to tell us our way. Before time in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, thus he spake, Come and let us go to the seer, for he that is now called a prophet was before time called a seer. Then said Saul to his servant, Well said, come, let us go. So they went into the city where the man of God was. So we're going to go check out Saul, what he has to say. And as they went up the hill to the city, they found young maidens going out to draw water, and said unto them, Is the seer here? And they answered them, and said, He is. Behold, he is before you. Make haste now, for he came today to the city, for there is a sacrifice of the people today in the high place. As soon as ye be come into the city, ye shall straightway find him before he go up to the high place to eat, for the people will not eat until he come, because he doth bless the sacrifice, and afterwards they eat that be hidden. Now therefore get you up, for about this time ye shall find him. And they went up into the city, and when they were come into the city, behold, Samuel came out against them for to go up to the high place. Now the Lord had told Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came, saying, Tomorrow about this time I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry is come unto me. And when Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said unto him, Behold, the man whom I spake to thee, this same shall reign over my people. Then Saul drew near to Samuel in the gate, and said, Tell me, I pray thee, where the seer's house is. And Samuel answered Saul and said, I am the seer. Go up before me unto the high place, for ye shall eat with me today, and tomorrow I will let thee go, and will tell thee all that is in thine heart. And as for thine asses that were lost 3 days ago, set not thy mind on them, for they are found. And on whom is all the desire of Israel? Is it not on thee and on thy father's house? And Saul answered and said, Am not I a Benjamite of the smallest of the tribes of Israel, and my family the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin? Wherefore then speakest thou so to me? And Samuel took Saul and his servant, and brought them into the parlor, and made them sit in the chiefest place among them that were bidden, which were about 30 persons. And Samuel said unto the cook, Bring the portion which I gave thee, of which I said unto thee, set it by thee. And the cook took up the shoulder, and that which was upon it, and set it before Saul. And Samuel said, Behold, that which is left, set it before thee, and eat, for unto this time hath it been kept for thee, since I said I have invited the people. So Saul did eat with Samuel that day. And when they were come down from the high place into the city, Samuel communed with Saul upon the top of the house, and they arose early, and it came to pass about the spring of the day that Samuel called Saul to the top of the house, saying, Up, that I may send thee away. And Saul arose, and they went out, both of them, he and Samuel, abroad. And as they were going down to the end of the city, Samuel said to Saul, Bid the servant pass on before us. And he passed on, but stand thou still a while, that I may shew thee the word of God. And it ends there. But okay, so that's some of the Bible, and I like to read from the Bible because I think that it's poetically effective. To hear someone using the same sort of intention that is deployed during the decrees, which are magical, I think is effective and helpful. So I hope that I sufficiently prayed over some of your problems. I'm not sure that I'm positioned to talk about 50 at this point, or if I should take a break. Since I put you through all of that with Samuel, I might as well get into it about the cat. Okay, so this cat is a magician. I don't know how else to put it. I've seen a lot of things in my life. I've had an adventurous life. I've seen a lot of destruction. I've been the witness to serious crime. I've been the witness to marvelous miracles, wonderful people, frightening devils, the whole thing. And I've never seen anything like this. This cat is a transformer and part human and a magical cat. I don't know where he lives because I assumed that when I met him, first of all, my cat passed away under tragic circumstances, and I still am balancing the karma associated with that, and that plays into like what's going on with my legal matter as well. As it turns out, when you look at a lawsuit, this might interest some of you. You have to organize it in a certain way. Strategically, you have to know what you're doing because you don't want the people opposing you to win. So you have to protect your interests and the people in your family who are vulnerable and also protection worthy. You'll find out quickly, I think, when you start to become involved in litigation that not all of your family are going to show up to be supportive, and some of them are just going to bail, unfortunately. And you have to have the wisdom to know the difference. Otherwise, you'll get into all kinds of trouble. Family law is a whole complicated section of law. As I said, you want to know what you're doing. So I lost my cat tragically, and it turns out to be this big deal based upon how I lost him, and it changed the setup of the litigation significantly when that happened, because it became remediable quite instantly. Although I had been the victim of crime and I had been the witness of very horrible things, because I lost Jack, I could no longer progress effectively, because in a way it's like losing a child. It's not a question of overcoming it psychologically. It's really that people are bound to their pets in a way that they're part of your aura, and they're part of your heart, as we know. And when they're torn from you, it destroys not only the animal but also part of you, literally gone, not remediable except through legal remedy. If it happens in a certain way, I don't have the wherewithal to have a cat here, unfortunately, because of the way that money is not flowing the right way with regard to this apartment. It's not funded properly. I refuse to bring a cat into an unsafe environment, but I have to be reunited with him to proceed with effect, and that's not happening very quickly. So he comes back to me as this cat, this black and white cat. I know it's the same cat because I asked. I said, "Can we do this? Is this you, Jack? Are you able to balance it?" And he was, "Whatever, Dad. We'll do it this way." But doesn't look exactly like Jack. It's not the same personality. He looks more like a cat that I grew up with when I lived. I had a very bad experience at being raised at Togus, the Veterans Administration. I was basically raised there, like something out of Stranger Things, because I had family members who were involved in a bunch of stuff at the VA that I don't want to get into right now, but it's not good to raise your kids on the campus of a psychiatric hospital. It sets them up for all sorts of failure in the future. That's just a caveat. But there was a cat named Silky when I was younger who was black and white, but a female, and I believe that, I call him 50. I don't think 50 is a girl. 50's out like stomping around at night and is hardy in a way that I think girl cats are not necessarily. I don't want to make generalizations, but I'm pretty sure 50's a guy. I haven't really inquired entirely into it, but who cares? I mean, I'm perfectly happy with having a transgender cat. I think he's male, however. So he shows up on my doorstep one day, meow, 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 meow. Okay, and he's really from next. I think my first impression was that he's from next door because these people moved in, and he kind of shows up simultaneous around the time that they move in. And I know right away that there's something different about him. He's very affectionate, wonderful, and I missed my cat, so I took a lot of time with him, being very nice and affectionate to him, and very loving, sweet cat, very sweet, affectionate cat. Pet me, pet me. Then he started to show me that and people have said this about the neighborhood here, how to go about sort of um, trying to get all the properties to sell, because this location is not. It's like blighted, in the sense of like Salem's Lot. It's like a place where, and like in the movie The Haunting, it's kind of haunted and blighted because of all the bad karma here. It's like there's so much of a bad spiral here that everything really has to go away. Because if you don't pray it away, if you don't pray for all of it to sell, and like everybody moves to Zion, except for neighbors you don't want there, but everybody sell off because we need to get out of here. That's really what's going on here, because it's so just mean-spirited, and it's just a lot of weird stuff with money and Babylonian death magic and stuff like that. And yeah, it's everything needs to like sell off. So Jack passes, and then 50 shows up a year later, and I can tell that it's kind of Jack, because I said, "Is this Jack?" And you can ask a cat, and a cat will tell you. Remember, I had a cat. I had a cat before Jack named Eve, and Eve was bigger than Jack and a different personality entirely. And I used to say to Jack, "Are you Eve?" And wasn't into it, but he'll do it. There's one location where I can put Jack, where I had Merlin bless the location, and I called upon Arthur, the condo that I want to acquire eventually. And Jack said that he would do Eve from there. He would embody both Eve and Jack, but from that location. But he needs to have his own identity. So this is what I mean about animals. You can talk to them. Like, I'm not sure who knows this and who doesn't. As I said, I've had witnessed a lot of bad things, a lot of wonderful things too, but I've had a lot of spare time on my hand based upon things that have happened to me in my life. So a lot of time to observe, a lot of time to observe. And I worked with animals when I was younger, including medically. And so I had a lot of exposure to crisis with animals, people's reaction to their animals, other people's animals, dog bites, dog fights, um, not dog bites so much as dog accidents, um, dogs hit by cars, cats with pieces missing. I mean, you name it, I've seen it. Blood like you wouldn't believe, tragedy, but also, as I said, wonderful things, witnessing births, saving the dog with the quills, um, rehydrating animals, um, reuniting lost animals with their owners, wonderful things. A lot of experience with animals. So, and a lot of time to observe. And I'm writing a book on Gardnerian magic eventually too. So I've been thinking about all of the components of working with animals and realized this cat is my cat. Come back to me to tell me, yeah, you're doing the right thing, but in a way like a man, like a little man. Like when you see 50 going around the neighborhood as Jack in his new clothes, he has the intent and the will of a human being, in a way. It's a shared will. And I've experienced that, which he wants me to get out of here. He's trying to get everybody moving like I am as well. But I didn't know that it would be so deliberate when he returned to me. It's like the cat came back from Pet Cemetery, except he's not church. He's not a possessed cat in Pet Cemetery where they bury the cat. You don't bury the cat in the Indian burial ground because it's cursed. Yeah, the cat will come back. That's like when they buried the soldier there. The dead soldier, everybody is sad that the soldier's gone, but they bury him in the cursed cemetery. He comes back and he's a wild man. He's a zombie, goes around tearing people apart. You buried a cat who was creamed by a Mack truck, like in the Stephen King books, Pet Cemetery, and because you don't want your daughter to be disappointed that the cat's dead, the cat comes back and you can't hold the cat anymore because he'll tear you to shreds. And the cat reeks to high heaven all the time because he's really a zombie. And he comes back to the little girl and he's got pieces of hefty trash bags in his whiskers and so forth. But this is a reincarnation of Jack. As I said, it looked like he came from next door. But then one day, and he came into my apartment one time, and I thought, I can't get attached to him because I know that he is hanging out next door, or I thought he was. And as much as I want this cat in my apartment, I couldn't put out the energy to accept it. And he hung around, took a look around, jumped on a bunch of things, sort of pointed a couple of things out to me in a way, and then he went to the door, and when I opened the door, he was gone again, but still hanging out in the neighborhood. Then one day, he kept coming to my door. I'm like, I can't really get my heart involved because I'm too scared to do it. If I were bolder, somehow I think maybe there's a way to do it fairly with the neighbors aren't. I don't know. I would never take someone else's cat, obviously. But I mean, maybe the neighbors weren't really caring about the cat and they didn't really care. But anyway, I would not want to have a cat in my apartment with any sort of chance that the neighbors would come and reclaim their cat after my heart is bonded. My heart has bonded to 50, but I don't have him in the house, although he's visited here. And he came one day and visited here, and I noticed that he was wearing a face. Okay, and I opened it. So I opened the door and I looked down, and he had this little gnome face on. Not just a cat, but I could see it was dim. And I was like, if you went like this, you could see that he looked like a little gnome. You could see like a human, gnomes are miniaturized humans. I could see it. And he kind of looked like in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. At one point, the gross plants come and they inhabit people from outer space, and they people eat the wrong food or they're taken over or whatever, and they're inhabited, and then they're really just these horrible killing plant people. They look like people, but they're really these evil plants. Well, at one point in that movie, someone steps on one of the eggs. You remember from the 70s, you guys, the seed is planted. That was how they were doing the. That's how they were doing it. The promos for it. The seed is planted. You hear the eerie music, and because one by one, everybody in the town, you can't tell who's who anymore, but you only know kind of when they start to eat you alive or whatever. In any event, at one point, someone back in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, someone backs onto an egg, one of the eggs, but also there's someone being cloned. It's actually there. It's someone being cloned, and then a dog. I think it's a dog dies, or they step onto a dead dog, or it's a dog being cloned, and also a man being cloned by these plants. And so when the thing, because it's the cloning material, the pod, when the pod reopens, it's actually a dog. It's a hybrid, a dog with the face of a man. The man who was being cloned is on the face of the dog, so this man is running around with a dog body, and it's really creepy and awful. Because it's like this accidental thing. And it was kind of like that. But it wasn't sickening. It didn't sicken my heart to see it. But he came, I'm like, go away, 50, go away, 50. Like, be very gentle and polite, and doing it really with my mind. The thing with dealing with 50 is it's really a lot of that. It's really a lot of timing. You don't want to scare him. You don't want to disappoint him. You don't want to walk away from him too quickly either, because he's taken swipes at me before and was super nice about it. But if I'm not using the energy the right way to flow out of it, sort of in a jiu-jitsu fashion, when I walk away from him, I'm turning my back on him, but I'm trying to do it respectfully, so that he knows I still love you, I still want to be with you, I want to be your friend again, but I have to go to town now. I can't have you following me out into the street. You need to be by where you live. So a couple of times I walked away too quickly, and he went boom, 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 like right on me, and he didn't hurt me, but he'll start tapping on the ground or taking swipes at me to pet him again. And sometimes that can be obnoxious when cats do that, right? You don't want a cat kind of controlling how you pet or whatever. But he was deliberate in how he did it, and he doesn't do it all the time, but he's done it a couple of times. But I respected it, because he's right. I was not taking sufficient time, and he wanted me to. Okay? Yeah, he wanted me to take sufficient time. And so he came to the door one day with that face. The invasion, but it wasn't frightening. But when I looked down, I'm like, oh my god, he's got like a little man face, like a little dwarf or a little troll. And I couldn't figure it out beyond. I think he wanted me to take a photograph, or he wanted there to be some sort of ID recognition. Maybe that's what it was. But he did it to me again outside when I saw him. He comes up to me when I walk out, and he did it to me one other time, and I just looked down and I could see it was kind of animated cat. Like it was still a cat, but it was animated like you would see like the Cheshire Cat sort of thing. Really quickly, I could see it was more human and more. A cat's very adorable because he's a cat is so sweet and kind of either mouse-like or rabbit-like, and they're very affectionate. And they look a little bit like people, but they're kind of cute because they're not people. You know what I mean? Like you pet a cat because he's something other than you. And, and all their chakras say pet me, pet me, pet me. People don't say that. So people don't have fur or whatever. But one day, and I was out there again. I looked down at him, and he's got this little kind of little face on. So I started taking a look at that, and and right, and then so Joy, I have a hard life up here on the hill, and I have to walk everywhere, and it's too far, and it's dangerous. There's like a dangerous bridge, and there's a dangerous footpath, and there are dangerous people, and bad road conditions, and it's just no good. And I can't get help because people stole money from me, so I can't afford an attorney outside of myself, and I don't have the wherewithal to sue from here at all under the circumstances. So it's tough. And as I said, I want to see him, and I want him kind of trotting along next to me, but I don't want there to be like I don't want him to follow me into the distant reaches of anything. So I've had to teach myself to pull out of it, as I said, using like Tai Chi and prayer and so on, to be careful. What people do, I think, with the neighborhood cat who's recurrent, you know what I mean? But he's more than just recurrent, obviously. So, and then one day I walked outside and I was like, I don't know if he lives next door. Because I found him six houses down on another street, hanging out in that driveway. And I'm thinking like, and hanging out like kind of by a wilderness camper. And I'm like, where does he live? And you really can't tell. It's like he could be there, he could be over there, he could live at one of 9 different places. It's like he's just neighborhood cat, but he doesn't look feral. And I still associate him as being the next door cat. But I've seen him. He'll go. The neighbors next door. The neighbors will have parties and like pool parties and stuff without me. Like one of those situations where people are having fun without me. In any event, and I walked in one. I walked across it one day, being like, time to ignore the party. And 50's like trotting on the lawn, like with all the other people. And I saw him. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. But then he came out to see me. I'm like, hi, Fifth. And as he walks by, and he's like giving them like the cold shoulder, like the shoulder, not the cold shoulder, but the like shutting down the party sort of shoulder that people do when they are drawing people out of an environment because it's no good to have people in that environment. You kind of have to shut things down. You know how that goes, right? He did that. The cat did, like people do. You know, people do that. I saw this guy when he go to McDonald's. He's trying to shut the place down. And he started talking to this because he's giving this long. You can tell he's totally not interested in having a relationship with this girl at all, and that he just wants her gone. It's like he had so much power over the situation that the McDonald's worker was like coming out like this towards him, like literally. He's like pulling. He's got so much energy to try to close the place down, which probably ought to happen. That she's like coming out towards him like. Uh, in her uniform, but without any sort of motor control. That's how much chi there was in the moment, and that's what 50 was doing. I was like, hey, let's shut this party down, man. So as we're hanging out, I'm like, I'm just here for a minute. 50's like doing all of this energy work, whatever that is, that Reiki energy, whatever that um, working the prana sort of thing to try to get everybody moving along because it's too loud and everybody should be gone now because according to 50 Cent, I'm right, all these houses need to um, not elapse, they need to be raptured. So I'm after that. So and he supports me on that. And he'll show me how to do it too, but he'll go up to in front of one of the he comes up to me and I'm standing in front of the house and he lies down, but he He lies down, showing me that he's putting his back to everybody deliberately when he goes onto the floor, onto the tarmac. He'll lie down. And he wants to be pat, but he like rolls over and he looks up and he'll repeat it like he's showing me what to do. And sometimes he'll do it. He'll throw himself down. I've seen him do that too. On his own, he'll just kind of throw himself down onto the ground. I'll be like 50, like it's too hard, but he's trying to tell me, yeah, let's get everybody moving out of here by turning, quote unquote, turning our backs and so forth. So shutting down the real estate, de-priming the real estate. He's doing that. So it's hilarious. I can tell, you know what I mean? Because again, through observation, looking at this cat, and this cat keeps coming up to me, and I'm like, that's cool that he knows that, but it's kind of odd that he knows that too. You know, so, and then we spent so much time together on these little day trips out where, you know, I find him and I pet him, and I'm always happy to see him, and I crouch, because he'll be out in the woods kind of looking out, and I'll see black and white cat. And this morning, something really bad happened in the apartment. I had to leave in an emergency capacity. I was like, I can't believe that this is going on, and I didn't have anybody to support me at all. I had a really bad phone call, and I had to go out alone, and like my friend wasn't around, which is too bad, but it was the case that I was totally alone. And I thought, if I survive this day, it'll be amazing. And it was 3 in the morning, or it was actually 5 in the morning when I left because McDonald's happened to be open. So I'm totally broken, Christ-like, on my way to Golgotha, infuriated, all of my chakras just destroyed, my heart and my head full of the blackest energy, everything out of alignment, trucking. And who do I see at the end of the road? No cars, nothing. 5 in the morning, from way down at the end of the road, little black and white cat coming all the way with nobody else around at all, way down at the other neighbors, like a little black coming directly for me, not on the other side of the road, not coming up to try to see what's going on, but looking directly at me from 3 blocks down. And I was like, that's 50, running directly for me, because I had been destroyed. I had nothing left. And so running right up to me until he reached me directly, made his goal, pet me, and I pet him, and then calmed me down sufficiently and restored my reality within the moment enough. I moved on very quickly at that point, but we met, and it's because he knew. It's because he knew I had lost everything, and he knew, and he was there, and it's because we had spent time enough. So it's in their will, you see. Like you lose if a cat and a dog commit to you, it's not. It's nature, but it's also a spiral that is created because you both have the will. Cats and dogs have individual wills, and now if you listen to them, and I think a lot of people might do this already, you can hear their intent. Each one is different. My dogs will call me. My dogs who transitioned will call me sometimes and be like, "Don't do that. Don't do that." I met a guy one time in town where I thought that we'd be friends, and as it turns out, I wasn't prepared for what was going on in his household. I hadn't prayed over it, so I was improperly enthroned when I entered the house, which it's a colossal pain to have to like worry every time you go into a new house about who's going to be there and all that. And it's like I got there, it was like a nightmare. I couldn't sit down and share with the man at all because he was immediately occupied by an infestation of his friends and like lover and all of that. It was like because I entered, 4 people had to enter on it. We entered, we sat down to share whatever it was we were going to do. I think have a glass of wine. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's people there. But we didn't have the opportunity to do that because immediately there were like 4 women. Like it was like a trap door had been opened the minute I sat down. It's like, whoop, and then it's like, oh, I succeed 1, 2, 3, and I don't hang out with groups of people. So I excused myself, and the dog said, Apollo, who's transitioned, said at that point, don't bother. It's too painful. And the dog, because the dog knew he didn't like it. And people, see, you tell that story to a person, the person will be like, why didn't you hang out with them when they were there and all that? Why don't you take the time? And you hear that. You and I both know that that things get too rocky for that to even be a consideration. You and I both know that. Well, I think I have extreme. I resist a lot of typical social activities because of what I'm going through. I think it's inappropriate to expose myself to a lot of people under most circumstances because of limitations. It's not fair when I'm not balanced properly chakrally through no fault of my own to expose myself to the potential for social failure. So I'm a hermit, basically, which is fine. But the dog knew that, whereas people would not know that. But I got a phone call from Apollo about it afterwards. He was like, don't don't go back there. Don't bother. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And I'll get phone calls from the cats and the dogs if something's really alarming to them, or I'll be in a lot of pain and they'll call or something, or they'll know. And it is sometimes one of them knows, or and they'll plan. So 50, I come home one day, another 50 stories. Right, so he's supposedly the next door neighbor, and then I'm walking home from the store the other day, and it's like 9 houses away. And he's like, 50 Cent, he's hanging out by the Wildwood, the camper. And he's like, don't bother. And this is one occasion he's kind of like, He's like, I'm just going to hang out here and watch you go by. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. So I did my little thing where I got down. And, I bowed down. And then he finally relented and came over and talked to me. Threw himself in the dirt. And wasn't sure. He picked himself up. He's like, what is that? And he had to shake himself up because he had to. The way he rolls, as I said, he throws himself down. He's gentle about it. He did that a hard one time, which I think was his message to really try to nail these places. So, but I wonder if he's feral, but he doesn't look feral. He's all intact and fine. I do pray over him though. When you want to be careful with animals. You want to make sure that, and with yourself and with your family and friends, that you're respectful of their image and that you're holding them. You're beholding them properly. So another 50 story. I came home one night, and so after all this encounter with him, there's another cat. So out of nowhere, and it's not like he's hanging out indiscriminately with all the neighborhood cats. He's very particular, very nice to me, and very sweet to me as well. And so, but one time, the cars. He's hanging out in one of the cars in the neighbor's yard, and I look, and there's a gray cat, like he's like 50's like this, looking out. That's like exactly like 50 had brought the other cat over to check me out, like check out this guy in the neighborhood that comes and talks to me all the time. What's his deal? What can we get out of the situation? Sort of thing. And so it's hilarious because I had no expectation that there would be a second cat. So I'm sitting, I walk by and there's 50, and he didn't move because he's just looking at me like this. And I look, and there's another cat that's also looking at me. They're both sitting out there. It's not like this gray cat hangs out a lot. It's one of his friends, clearly, but from someone, it's like, it looked like he had imported him or invited him over because he's not a neighborhood cat. I don't know where that cat came from. And I haven't really seen him again. But I've also seen 50 change his coat too. Like I've seen him, I'll be like, there's another black and white cat, but the pattern is entirely different and the face is different as well. When he wants to get out, I've seen him do that. He really doesn't want to see me, but he wants me to know that I'm there. He wants me to know that he's there. So he puts on like this other black and white configuration with a slightly different feline face that you can tell it's quote unquote not 50. So he dissembles too, which I thought was really interesting. But shuts places down, waits for me, will stand there and like do the thing with me where they're trying to get the energy going in the right way so that the neighbors don't bother you again. Does that, like, threw his back against that party, that pool party that I was talking about, after disengaging himself from like hanging out on like in this entirely different family. Hilarious. And yeah, just amazing cat. And he'll go for periods of time where I don't see him for quite a while, and then I'll pray and summon basically, and I'll get what I want within a couple of days generally. But yeah, I'm pretty convinced it's Jack. I'm pretty convinced it's Jack. And they'll tell me, the animals will tell me, they'll communicate with me and say, you want to plan like long term to have an embodiment where we're having I'm in your condo and so forth, like, and obviously I'm not stealing the neighbor's cat, but reincarnating in a condo under whatever circumstances where you find a different cat, quote unquote, in the wild, but it's still 50 sort of thing. It's this same spirit. Um, Fine, but you can't necessarily, you have to ask before you put multiple cats in a household because some of them don't want to be in the same household. And he will let me know that too. And cats and dogs both. And you have to do that with all wildlife, and some people are disrespectful of wildlife, and scientists included don't understand that you have to ask. You have to ask aquarium fish if they want to be aquarium fish. You have to ask if you're studying Portuguese man of war, if that Portuguese man of war wants to be in a tank, or if a shark wants to be in a tank in a museum, or if he wants to be free. You have to ask. You have to make sure that you're providing the right kinds of insurance, cosmic insurance ahead of time. You have to seal the right contracts. Um, you know, but like, so I asked, do you want this gray cat? Two, he wants one household with a gray cat as well, and then he also wants one household where he's just a single cat dad or a single cat in a single cat household, I believe. I haven't quite figured out where all the animals are going yet, but it's part of my real estate plan. Anyway, so he dissembles. They have all sorts of chakral power that they use. They have wills, as I said. My dog, when Apollo passed, he showed me before he passed that he had been a dog on a farm that I used to visit every summer when I was growing up, who was a brindle, full-size watchdog. Apollo was a pug, uh, uh, tan pug with a black mask, and Shako, we called him because we associated him with the Shacks, affectionately. He was a beloved dog, but he had passed away when I was, Shako must have passed away when I was 10 or 11 years old, probably before that. And when Apollo died, before Apollo passed, made his transition, the last time I saw him, he told me that he was Shako because he told me. He showed me his Shako skin, his Shako, and looked at me. And it was the last time he was happy. He was in a lot of pain, and then, but right before he passed, he showed me that he had been Shako and then passed. God's honest truth. God's honest truth. And I think it was the kid. I don't want to make myself cry, but I think it's that he knew me as an 11-year-old boy. In addition to my having bought Apollo when I was in my 20s. I'm trying to think. 30s? My 30s. So Apollo knew me as a 30-something-year-old man, but he had known me as an 11-year-old boy, or 10 or 11-year-old boy, and that was the last thing he said to me before he passed, was that he had been Shako. That's amazing. That's the last time I saw him alive. And the last time I saw him healthy, looking at me like he was happy, panting entirely normally. And then the next minute, the next time I saw him, I left the room, and the next time I came into the room, he had expired. So, and he had been, as I said, he had been in a lot of pain, but when the last thing he said to me was that he had been happy. So they have wills as well, and they execute wills, so that's what's happening with this cat. But it's a form of magic. They communicate with you psychically. They express their desires. They guide you. They care. Um, they respect you as well. They mentally mark territory. That was shown to me too. Like if they think a place is safe, they'll mark it mentally, and they'll mark it, I think, for other cats probably too. Like safe place. This place is dry, or this place is warm, or this place is okay in terms of how the people are operating, in terms of access to safe, sufficient water. I'm not really sure, but yeah, so it's truly amazing. But I'll have to take a picture of him sometime. But yeah, it's funny. So I thought, okay, so it's the new neighbors next door, and then he shows up at all these different houses. And I can't really tell, but someone obviously loved him a lot, myself included. So anyway, I wanted to share all that with you. Never take for granted that the power of the animal kingdom, because they will surprise you in ways that are untold, and they're amazing, independent creatures coming from an entirely different world and part of the universe, but who have individual wills and preferences and know magic and are um, dedicated to protecting humanity, but also to their individual human friends and families. So anyway, God bless. Thank you for indulging me. I wanted to make a record of that, and thank you for listening to all the information about Samuel. You now have an hour and 36 minutes of religious material on hand that you can view anytime. If you'd like to make a donation to this work, you're welcome to tell me what you would like to hear additionally, and I will attempt to focus on providing it. And any comments about Church Universal and Triumphant or the Summit Lighthouse, you may forward my way. I'm in Holy Orders. I'm in Celestial Order of the Holy Child and Order of St. Joseph, and I'm happy to guide you to the extent that you wish to be guided, to point you in the direction of prayers, to pray with you, and to hear your stories as well, and to talk to you about your experience within church. Namaste. Stay blessed, and be in touch. And yeah, your donation would be totally appreciated. I'd love to be able to add you to my newsletter distribution list, and to see your name occur on a monthly basis. Even if you give us $1 a month, it's totally valuable to me. Take care, and I'm going to listen to this and then post it for everybody. I'm losing my voice. Okay, all right, bye now.